we were in a little bit of a spiritual mess at that stage. We'd had some big hits around the world, and I think we all just got ourselves into a state we couldn't really write a whole album's worth of good songs.
Welcome to the Sweet Song Podcast, where we unwrap your favorite songs, plus share the stories, secrets, and worldviews behind the music and musicians you love. I'm your host, Kristi Wooten, and on this episode, Philip Oakey and Susan Sulley from the Human League, the iconic group from Sheffield, England, who defined new wave looks and sounds for so many of us in the 1980s and beyond. They're on the Generations Tour across the country right now in the U.S. with Alison Moyet and Soft Cell. Before we drop the interviews, head on over to purepopfornowpeople.com and sign up for my Substack to learn all about the tour and everything you want to know about the Human League. Now here's my conversation with Philip Oakey and Susan Sulley. Welcome to the Sweet Song Podcast. I'm your host, Kristi Wooten, and I'm so excited to have Philip Oakey and Susan Sulley in separate conversations just for you today. The Human League has had many members over the years, but the three faces we all know and remember, of course, are Philip Oakey, Susan Sulley, and Joan Catherall. All three are going to be on stage performing those hits that you love, including Mirror Man, Fascination, and Don't You Want Me. So let's get started with an all-important sweet song question. What is the sweet song that you're looking forward to performing on the tour?
I enjoy a song called Seconds, because it's very much very like the driving synthesizer music that we're known for. But we usually do a song called One Man in My Heart, which I leave the stage for. I'm probably getting changed somewhere, and Susan sings, and I always really enjoy that. Susan and Joanne sing that without me. It's a little bit immodest to say I like the song, because I was very much a part of the writing of that song. It feels like I did something a little bit different, and in my mind it worked out.
I always get terrified when I do One Man. I feel very exposed. It's quite an exposed song. But yeah, it was well, and Philip just said, we want you to sing it. And at that time, we were working with a guy called Ian Stanley, who used to be in Tears for Fears. And he was also I'm not very confident in the studio. And Ian made me feel fabulous and made me feel like I could do it. I do get quite a nice reaction. Sometimes we call it the toilet song. It's where Philip goes to get changed, and lots of people just think, "Oh, we're not going to listen to her. We're going to go to the bathroom." So, Joanne and I have laughed many times calling it the toilet song. I know you call it bathroom in America, But yeah, I think what One Man is good for is it shows a little bit of light and shade within the group. It's not just all about Philip doing the vocals, in the same way that, I sing half, a verse in Don't You Want Me, and the same way that Joanne does the same in Human. And I think, it's about the three of us. And although Philip is the singer and he's fabulous at what he does, I think One Man is great to show a different side,
One of the things that's been striking me this week as I was preparing for the interview and going back and listening to the albums and how I felt about the songs then and what they meant to me or what I envisioned them as. And I couldn't help but listening to the Lebanon again, and the lyrics, I was like, oh my goodness, it sounds like it's right now. It sounds like it's and I know that Human League was never an overtly political band, but talk to me a little bit about, the power of lyrics. They're there forever, once you commit them to recording, and they really, can reverberate in different times. That's got to be kind of an interesting thing to think about when you look back on that song in particular.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a worry sometimes, I think. That was just something that was going along. It was named sort of in reference to a song by Susie and the Banshees. They had done a song called Israel, and one of our songwriters, Joe Callis, just piped up and said, "Look, they've done one called Israel. We could do one called the Lebanon." And there had just been the couple of massacres in Lebanon, and we were more than anything baffled. I think because we don't really understand how we keep being in the same position, that I had hoped that things would be getting more and more peaceful. We're very ordinary, run of the mill people, and we always get upset that the people that get hurt in wars, conflicts, big guys playing out their ambitions are always the ordinary people. You know, the little guys trying to just bring up their kids very often. All they want to do, what most people want to do, they want to earn a little bit of money, maybe get a place to live, be able to feed their kids, and then these big things keep happening, and it's just about the sense of bafflement. You know, we don't take sides or anything really. I don't think you can in a group because there's, you know, I think there were 6 of us in the band when we wrote that, and I couldn't possibly write down lyrics that said what everyone in the band thought.
Right.
But it's just that my God, can't we somehow learn to talk before we fight?
Right. And especially that line, I mean, when I'm just driving around Atlanta, going to a meeting and it's like, we're supposed to keep the peace, that line, I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly how I feel right now.
I mean, I think the Lebanon's it's really about the small people that I think get left behind that people don't talk about so much in war. I think we talk about everything that goes off. Now, I don't want to get too into it, but it's about someone who loses their home and who doesn't know where to go and what, all the things that go on around you. And it's the small people is what it's about. And yes, it does resonate, and it's it's a terrible time at the moment.
There's so much talk of what being human, means in the age of AI and how, all the 1980s music was supposedly so futuristic and now that really is coming to pass. But the name Human League and then the song Human, I do think there's an interesting echo there that you're named after being human. Have you thought about that and the meaning of the name in an age like this?
I think we knew about the contrast, that obviously people were going to accuse us of being over mechanical. We believed at the time that we thought if we had quite a mechanical sort of robotic backing, that the contrast would be that the voice really stood out from it and revealed that it wasn't really organized and reflected sort of our human, very often our human failings. But that was the idea. We knew that it would come up with that thing, that we knew it would give people headlines like, so these people think they're human, don't they? In fact, a big game show host on TV in Britain, when we rose to fame, one of his gags as he came out was he said, "Have you seen the Human League? If that's human, I don't want to be human." And we thought, great, that's worked.
Well, I would feel the opposite today. I think the opposite would be true. It would totally feel human, and I'm sure it does.
It was funny. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years after, maybe a little longer, but suddenly you saw Bon Jovi on TV programs playing synthesizers and groups like that. I'm not saying them per se, I'm just saying groups like that used to make fun of us. And like you said, they always said it was inhuman, it was improper because it was coming out of a machine. And now, well, I think there's a place for AI, but it scares me when I find that I hear a record and I think, oh, I know that's not a real person that's done that, and that it frightens me for artists, especially young up and coming artists, because I think that one of the things I loved about music when I was small and when I was growing up was I loved the imperfections. I loved the fact that the songs, the singers and the groups that I liked would never have got through any of those music talent shows because they weren't the best. They weren't the logical singers. They were David Bowie had. He would never have got on. I don't know. We had pop stars and things, and you had the other Simon Cowell version, whatever it was in America. And they all those groups. I love Gary Newman, and they would never have got on any of those programs because they weren't your archetypal singer. And I think that's one of the problems with AI is that it's all so perfect. And music shouldn't be about perfection. It should be about the little flaws, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the song Human too, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, and
Yes,
when that record came out, that was a whole new world for you all because you ended up on urban radio and other things with
yeah,
that song. Do you wanna talk
yeah.
about the song a little bit?
Well, sure. You are reminding me of a magic time in our life, in our working life. One of the most exotic things, and it's not going to sound like it to you, but to go for I think we're 3 or 4 months in Minneapolis when we're very ordinary people from the north of England, and to go to an urban studio, work with guys we didn't know but who we really really admired, and to be treated hospitably by them and have our careers saved. We were in a little bit of a spiritual mess at that stage. We'd had some big hits around the world, and I think we all just got ourselves into a state we couldn't really write a whole album's worth of good songs. So we walked in to Jimmy and Terry's studio. Jimmy and Terry listened to the stuff, and Jimmy said, "Well, you've not got a whole album here. We'll do some for you. We've got a ballad," and he played us the backing to Human, and I sort of had a sharp intake of breath. I'm not a huge ballad fan. I always said I don't want to do a ballad unless it's as good as You've Lost That Loving Feeling. But even when we heard the backing, we knew that there was something absolutely tremendous. In fact, I thought it was so good they would have to it would have to get worse when they put the vocals on, and it didn't. Their vocal lines were as good as their brilliant backing,
Yeah.
and well, what one of there's been like 3 or 4 points in our career where we could easily have just had to give up. I'd be driving a cab or working in a bookshop now, but because of the intervention of people like Jimmy and Terry, we managed to get through.
The group was falling apart. It wasn't very good at the time, and Ian and Philip and myself were listening to a group called Change, and Simon Draper, the managing director of the record company, he asked everyone who they wanted to work with, and we said Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, but we thought they'll never work with us. We're a synth pop group from the north of Sheffield, and they're like, even then they were working with, I know they were only just finishing Janet when we went to work with them, but they'd work with Alexander O'Neill, and they'd work with some of the most Sherelle, and all these people that were magnificent singers, but they were looking for a group to cross over, and they absolutely loved Fascination. It was never about Don't You Want Me with them. It was always about Fascination. And they wrote Human. It was there, and they saved us at that point, I have to say. They were incredible to work with. They were really, really nice men. I've lots of great memories. I mean, we met Prince, and it was just fabulous. It was a very Minneapolis is a stranger, a little bit like, or it was back in 85, 86. It was like Sheffield. It wasn't like the big cities. It wasn't like Chicago and New York and LA. like London really isn't anything like Sheffield isn't anything about like London, and it we felt at home there, and they were, we're not the greatest singers, and they made us feel fantastic, and their work, the way that they work, watching Jimmy Jam do percussion on Human. He'd got all these instruments lined up in the studio, cowbells and bells and all sorts. And he just did one take, listening to it in his headphones. And it was like, oh my God, you've made it 15 times better. They were, yeah, they were an inspiration. And more importantly, I've got to say, they were two of the loveliest men I've ever met. They were lovely.
Aw, that's good. Most bands, especially coming out of Britain at the time, were lineups of 4 or 5 guys,
Yeah,
or like Wham had backing singers, but you all were different because people did take turns with the vocals, and it
yeah,
felt inclusive, kind of in the way like the B-52s did. So I
yeah.
didn't know if you all kind of came out pretty much in the same year or so. They might have been a year or 2 ahead of you, but did you have any realization or recognition of that band when you were first putting the band together in the late '70s?
Do you know, I don't know that anyone has ever compared us to the B-52s, and I'm now trying to think because obviously they had their more um, grungy side, the Rock Lobster sort of side, and I very clearly remember really enjoying that in a club called the Limit in Sheffield, and I can't remember if it was before we started or not. We have toured with them. We did a co-tour, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. We love the B-52s, and we thought that was a really good lineup. And um, we have always been very conscious that we have women and men in the band. The comparison I most normally bring up at this stage is Fleetwood Mac,
Right.
although they're, they're about 100 times as popular and good, probably as good as us. So maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, it is actually a good comparison because of,
Yeah,
the different vocals. And the reason I brought up B-52s as well is they had an interesting parallel, not that you all sound the same, but they did have an interesting parallel because, Nile Rodgers kind of intervened in their career the same way that Jimmy Jam and Terry
yeah,
Lewis did for you
yeah,
guys. So that's
yeah,
interesting. And of course, B-52s being from Athens, Georgia, so a lot of those folks will
yes.
be driving to the show. I know it's difficult to ask artists on tour to remember back, or all the cities blend together and that kind of thing, but I didn't know if you did have any memories of being here over the years or anything that might have stood out.
I I'm afraid that I'm a little bit mercenary in things, and I think that the thing that I remember about Atlanta is we were there one time, and I went into a shopping mall, and it seemed to be the poshest, most expensive, most exclusive shopping mall I'd ever been into. And I thought, wow, this must be the most expensive flash shopping mall in the world. And I think I went across the road and there was another shopping mall that was just as expensive. Is that right? Isn't that
That
Atlanta?
that's a very good memory, and it's funny,
Yeah,
a lot of the British artists say that, um they are still across the street from each other. Of course, shopping mall experiences have changed because of,
yeah,
online shopping and Amazon and all those, but, yes, you have a very good memory that did happen. I'm sure you had a great time shopping there.
yeah. It was more how designery they were. The
Yeah.
the stuff was absolutely top end. I mean, we knew that Atlanta was a huge hub, obviously the air hub, and through talking to Jimmy and Terry, we knew that it's very much of a sports hub, isn't it?
Yes, we have all the majors
That
here.
yeah, and that draws quite a rich crowd and has made it a very rich town, I think.
It's definitely got both sides. Let
Yeah,
me tell you that, which is something we need to work on as a city, but
haven't we all nowadays?
yeah, it's, the income disparities just, it's,
Which I
definitely.
go, the town we come from, Sheffield, is very famous as having one of the biggest biggest income disparities in the UK. Actually, we ponder on that, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, and so many films about Sheffield present that
Yeah.
as well. So for the younger audiences, when somebody comes to your music in 2026, what do you hope they take away?
Well, I think that in a strange way, because our instrumentation was new, everyone thought that we were a bit revolutionary. I don't think we were. We were maybe the last generation that really valued old-fashioned song structures. You know, that our songs have almost always got an introduction, verses, links, choruses, and a mid-eight and things. And I sort of think we crystallized that sort of thing. I think the other thing about us is that we definitely really are a pop rock band that that when a lot of people got embarrassed about doing it and people were sort of getting a bit grungy and people like Nirvana who I actually love but were sort of more or less making a joke of the idea and the look of it. We don't. We are we're a pop band. We wanted to be a pop band since 1977-ish because we loved an English band called Roxy Music. That's our prime thing. But we loved David Bowie and so on. And from then we wanted to be a pop band, and we're still a pop band.
The reason why we're still going after all these years, after all this time, is because it's about the songs. It's not necessarily about us. The songs are great. The people that wrote the songs, Philip and Joe and Ian and Adrian and then Russell and all the people that we've worked with. The songs are great, and they're not. I'd like to think that people don't think they're preachy songs. They're just about ordinary people. They like you were talking about the Lebanon. They're about the ordinary folk, and I think that resonates with people, and I think that's what it's about. The songs. It's not about us.
Thank you so much for this time, and I will definitely be at the show. I wish you all safe travels and good health.
Thank you very much, Kristi. It's nice to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to talk to you, Kristi.
The Sweet Song Podcast is hosted by Kristi Wooten, that's me, and produced by Sustenance Group, LLC. Special thanks to this week's guest. Be sure to check out full episodes wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe and like on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Visit Pure Pop for Now, people, for more information, and we'll see you next week.